David Ballard with Moxie Productions. He is a theaterman, a puppet master, and also refers to himself as a professional fool. Let's give a nice warm welcome to the Fool of Moxie.
Very much. I appreciate it. Saying I am indeed a fool. But it's all right, I'm a professional fool. It's my job. So before we do a little more foolery later in the show, I'm going to teach you a little bit about puppetry. And I'm going to start off with teaching you a little bit about the history of puppetry. Now, a lot of people think, how in the world did puppets ever get started? How did theater ever get started? Well, a lot of folks seem to think it started with a hunting disguise. What do you think? What in the world would a hunting disguise have to do with doing a puppet show or doing theater? Well, we only have to look right here in the United States of America to when they first settled in Jamestown in Virginia. And we see a description of how the Indians would go hunting for deer. Now what the Indians would do, they would take a deer they had previously killed, they would dry the skin, they would leave the hooves attached, and they would leave the head attached, and they would stuff the head. And then they would put this deer over their back, and they'd practice walking just like a deer. And they'd move the head just like a deer. You wonder why in the world would they want to do that? Well, they only have bow and arrows, and deer are very fast. So if they could practice and move enough like a deer, they could sneak up and get closer to the herd of deer before they rose up to shoot their bow and arrow, thus helping themselves in the hunt. So we have, basically, puppeteers acting like deers, or working what would be considered a deer puppet. I'm going to show you how this is going to look on the shadow screen. That is actually what you would see in their shows. Of course, it would be very dark out, and the shadows would be even better. Now, in the West, they took this same idea, and they made smaller and all black cut-out puppets out of simple cardboard. And we're going to show you how a puppet like this can look on the shadow screen. This fellow was a workman from a show that I first did for Colonial Williamsburg and in the Smithsonian Institution, a show that was popular in the 18th century in the colonial times of America and was one of the most popular shows, was performed hundreds of times, called The Broken Bridge. Now, you can make a shadow out of anything. Of course, you know people do shadows with their hands, that sort of thing. This is one that I designed that I actually teach kids in school to make themselves. It's made out of plastic. It's painted with markers, and we draw in it, scratch the markers off, and I'll show you how this one works. And so you can actually see the color of this one really good. There we go. Shadow box. So, now a lot of people think, isn't that funny? How odd to be watching a show on the lighted screen. But think about what happens when you go to the movies or when you watch TV. What are you doing? You're watching a show on a lighted screen. So in many ways, you could say that shadow puppetry is the world's earliest television. Now, also in the Far East, we had a type of puppet raised up called rod puppet. And this is a rod puppet from Indonesia. Now, these puppets were all great heroes and gods. And you would see these puppets right in front of the screen. They have a movable head, and the puppeteer would sit by on a low table, and he'd bring all the different characters out. And all the shows were mostly stories about their religion. They're great heroes. They're great gods. Well, the Western folks in Europe took this idea, and they thought, what a great idea. We'll make our puppets a little more like regular people. And this is one that I made for a show when I was working at Jamestown Island, the first English colony in America. He was one of the gentlemen of that island. And these puppets would be worked with a screen to hide the puppeteer over the head. Well, hello there, everyone. How are you today? Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. As you can see, they can bend, they can move their head, and they can be quite a flexible puppet. In addition to that, I've designed this puppet. This is another type of puppet that kids like you can make in the classroom. Very simple. Same idea, just a little bit simpler how to make it. It's a styrofoam egg, and we just take some instant paper mache and model over that. We've got a styrofoam ball right there. We cut the felt and just simply glue it together, a bit of rope and a couple of dowels, and we have a very workable puppet. Now, an even simpler type of hand and doll puppet you can make, so to give you an idea how sometimes you can make puppets of the very simplest of things. This is one that can be made in less than an hour. It's called my lunch bag puppet. Now, the lunch bag puppet, we've got one lunch bag for the body, one lunch bag rolled up for each of the arms. That's 3 lunch bags. We've got a styrofoam cup for his body. We've got 2 forks for his spoons. This is cut out of a small paper plate, his head is bent backwards, and a few bamboo skewers. And for really only pennies, you can make a pretty nice looking puppet that works pretty well. So that's rod puppets. Now, very famous here in this country and all around the world, some of the most loved puppets are string puppets, also known as marionettes, puppets with a string. Now, I'm going to demonstrate first a type of puppets that work with only one string. This type of marionette dates all the way back to the 12th century. Out, so